Hey there, welcome back to Up Next in Commerce, the #1 show for all things e-commerce, where we get to hear from the best founders, CEOs, and digital leaders today. So if I told you that you could get the Rolex of cookies delivered to your door right now, would you be interested? Matthew Jung certainly was, and that's why he went to work for Last Crumb. And since he joined the company as CEO, it's become one of the hottest D2C brands with a waitlist about a mile long. I'm talking about 150,000 people on a waitlist for cookies. What was the secret to creating a massively in-demand product, other than delicious cookies, obviously? Find out right here on this interview. This is Up Next in Commerce. I'm your host, Stephanie Postles, CEO of Mission.org, and I'm excited to dig into this one. All right, let's jump into it. Before we dive in, I want to give a quick shout out to our partners, Salesforce Commerce Cloud. They not only help make this podcast possible, but they are the #1 commerce platform. So go check them out at salesforce.com/commerce. All right, Matthew, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited and a little bit hungry while prepping for this interview today. So I'm hoping I can make it on the list to get the next cookies. But until then, I mean, we'll see, I guess. I know how competitive it is. I want to start the interview off by hearing about your background because it was very, very intriguing going through and looking at all the different, you're a multi-time founder. You have all these different companies you started, some of which I think you started in college or while you were in college. And so I was hoping we could start there and just kind of go through, your entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, so I think started my entrepreneurial journey pretty young. I started my first company was called Wellen while I was at Whittier College. And we made surfboards and we made apparel. And it's kind of like that funny story, sold it out of the back of the car and just kept evolving. And that was really, it was pre D2C looking back. It was kind of like when Facebook was just getting started. So all of the amazing tools and things that we have now to build a brand didn't really exist then. And I kind of think of it as my time. I ran that brand for about a decade, and I exited and sold it to a company called Huckberry, which is a big men's online retailer. But I kind of view it as the period that I spent learning all the nuts and bolts of building a D2C brand without all the tools that actually let you do it really easily now. Going to Wells Fargo and setting up a merchant services account to try to figure out how to sell online. And it's just it's kind of wild thinking back to it. And we grew the brand to be sold all over the world. We did partnerships with Uniqlo. We sold in every PacSun, Tilly's. It was a really fun time. And that kind of led to subsequent entrepreneurial endeavors, a high-end men's basics line called Grover, where we sold really amazing white t-shirts that were made in downtown LA into Birchbox. And then a skincare business I worked on for a long time, and then kind of transitioned into doing a lot of consulting for other early stage founders or CEOs on really interesting projects, kind of solving tough BD or almost a outsourced chief of staff for 3 to 6 months to a year, working on high level projects. And then that kind of led me to join Last Crumb, which is really my first time joining a company not as the founder, and acting kind of as an outsourced CEO to help the founders, Derek and Alana, build their vision for what is Last Crumb, which has been a really kind of interesting journey too.
Yeah. So after having your own companies and doing a lot of advising, what was the draw to come over to Last Crumb? What was the opportunity that you spotted where you were yes, I want to be the CEO?
I think that for me, it kind of starts with the challenge and the opportunity. There was a really clear, Derek and Alana had a really clear vision for what they wanted in terms of, this is what the product is. This is how it's supposed to taste. One of the early lines that they said to me on one of the first calls. So this is actually, I think, the week of my 1-year anniversary working with them.
Yay.
And
congratulations.
Which is wild. And when I joined, it was really kind of a clean slate in the sense that they'd spent, which was very uncommon in my opinion, they spent so much time testing the product, building out the recipes, working on the branding with an agency called Truffle in LA, and not launching yet. And so when I kind of came on, there was this clear vision with a really amazing product and the clean slate that every founder wants, which is, how do we build and commercialize this thing? What's the go-to-market strategy? What's the financial plan? And so there was still a lot of really interesting, tough challenges and even pre-launch that I was able to join them and help solve and like build roadmaps for. And so it wasn't like just stepping into a company that already existed with a bunch of employees and stepping in as CEO. It was really stepping in as like CEO and then helping them figure out how we were actually even going to launch Last Crumb. And I remember like very distinctly on the last call that I had with Derek before like I decided to join was he said, I want to build the Rolex of cookies. And coming from fashion and like working in CPG and like direct to consumer for so long, that's like a very intoxicating like statement to like say to someone. And that really like kept me up at night, which is like, that's a crazy idea. But man, if we could do it, how like amazing and fun would that be? And also like what a really interesting business that like could be built. And so that was, I think, the thing that got me like really, really intrigued and like kind of like took it over the edge. And then I think that we were really focused and like super disciplined in how we launched the brand. And we saw like a lot of like really small like compounding success in the early days that we just kept building on. And we didn't overcomplicate it and we kept it really tight in terms of like team and in terms of products and SKUs and things like that. And it's really been completely organic in the way that it's like grown over the last year. And I don't know, I'm really proud of like what we've done so quickly since we launched and sold our first cookie in April of 2021.
Yep. I mean, so taking on the CEO position last year is like an interesting time to do that, thinking about all the challenges that were going on and logistical issues. And when you came in, like what did the first 90 days look like when you came in and you kind of like audited what was going to happen and your plans, and like what did that actually look like to get the company launched and actually selling?
Well, and this kind of goes back to I think why it was like such a like perfect fit was Derek and Alana knew what they wanted, but they hadn't yet like really like figured out the nuts and the bolts of some of the like operational things. And so because there was a clean slate, a lot of like the supply chain issues, a lot of like the issues with like everything weren't really problems for us yet because we had nothing to compare them to. And so we got to like kind of build a business knowing all of the stuff that was a problem and kind of layering in like solutions for that in real time as we were actually like doing it. So we kind of accounted for a lot of the things that were really throwing a lot of, I would say, my peers like for a loop because it was changing the way they did business. And we just integrated those into the way we started doing it. And so the first 90 days for us was really spent a lot on like, high level like strategy, like where are we going? What are we trying to build? What does growth look like? What does like our early margin profile look like? And how many people do we need? What is the space? What is shipping? And like, as we kind of started to layer in like answers to those questions, like more things became clear. And, we ended up, in April, we ended up doing like a small test drop. I think it was the 17th of April or the week of the 17th. And we, that was the first time we sold product online on our like website, and we sold out. And it was kind of like this, okay, let's do it again next week. And it kind of led to, it's just, I would say a very organic one foot in front of the other approach. But that first 90 days was a lot of like, who are we and like, where are we going? And what company are we trying to build? And what are the like most impactful like projects that we can do that are going to move us forward? And what are the things that like we don't need to think about yet?
Yeah. Okay. So I want to unpack that a bit of hearing like, if you come in and you start analyzing even, my own company, anyone's company, and you come in and you're like, here's the important questions I should ask up front. If I'm starting a new e-commerce company, what are the things that you were like, we can actually worry about these things later? Because from the outside, I'm like, I see Last Crumb, you guys built an amazing brand. You have, a wait list. Every time you drop the cookies, you have people on the wait list waiting, and like you have people talking about you everywhere. And so it seems like you kind of did everything right from the outside. But I'd love to know, like, what were the things that you deprioritized to start with that you think can maybe come later in a company's life?
So the question I kind of always start with just generally is, should this actually even exist? Which I think is like, one of the biggest problems with D2C is that like a lot of the stuff that's like being created and sold like shouldn't actually exist at all. Like this isn't a problem that anyone had. This is just like a solution that like could make money. And so I think for the cookie thing, it was like, this is delightful. The world is like it's just a crazy place. Like, who doesn't like cookies? So it's like, for me, it answered the like, oh, it should exist. And then I think we just stemmed everything back to the customer experience. So like, we started with like a really clear, 3 clear pillars that we analyzed everything that we did by. And this is one of the things that Derek and Alana and myself worked on a lot in that first 90 days, which is what are our like core values? And for us, it was the customer experience is the most important thing, like at all costs. And that has multi-pronged. You know, obviously the cookies need to be the best they've ever had. The packaging needs to be amazing. The unboxing needs to be great. And then the second is we believe that we're really building like a super high-end premium aspirational like luxury brand in kind of category defining in like the sweet space. Cause like there are really great companies that make, you know, baked goods and they're awesome. But like we're selling cookies like 2-3 times more than those expensive companies have ever sold cookies. And so we want to make sure that everything we did paid off that kind of brand. And then the last was we wanted to also build a company that was like commercially viable and like could grow and have sales and make money and be something that like could build value. And so I think that that was the lens that we looked at every project. And so some of the things that we deprioritized to like directly answer your question was like, all right, well, for us, we're going to focus on emails and we're going to focus on Instagram, but we're not going to do TikTok and we're not going to do Twitter and we're not going to do Facebook. And so we basically made some rules around we are going to deprioritize channels that we know are important and could be huge drivers for our business, but we'd rather do a channel well and like really kind of like understand it and start to build that community and our voice and like how it works before we evolve and like go to the next. And so I think that a mistake I've made, maybe no one else has ever made this, but I think it's like generally like universal, is that you kind of, as an entrepreneur, believe that you have to be everywhere immediately. Like I need to be where my customers are. And like my customers are the world. So I need to be on Twitter and Facebook and Instagram, and I need to be like doing everything. And I need to be offering discounts. I need to have like win back emails and abandoned cart emails. And what we said was like, no, we're just going to be on Instagram and we're only going to send an email when we do a drop. And we're going to send you a welcome email when you join. And our website is going to be a landing page that tells you to join the waitlist. And that's going to be our entire brand experience. And we're going to like you're kind of cutting out all that stuff that you need, you know, the about page and like, oh, let's do the facts. It's like, well, there aren't any facts. Like get on the waitlist and you'll figure it out. And I think that by stripping it down, we created something that actually provided a cool and interesting customer experience that people responded to. It paid off our brand by like helping us like fuel the fire of like, what is Last Crumb? And like, this is really interesting. And it helped us like commercially grow something that actually has been pretty successful over the last year or 11 months, whatever it's been.
Yeah. I mean, focus. I love the concept of just like focusing on the things that matter, because you can definitely look around and see, I mean, many entrepreneurs, like you said, doing all the things, going on all the platforms, every new piece of technology. Let's try that. And it can be hard to not also be competitive when you watch, you know, the other brands doing that and playing in the new spaces and also having maybe success. And it can be easy to, not stay focused on just do one thing well or one platform well.
Well, and it's hard because there's so much noise. Like there's so many signals, like as entrepreneurship, as like even a career, you know, which I feel like it really wasn't when I was like 18 and starting Wellin, you know, and like direct to consumer as like a kind of like really interesting disruptive business model has like grown in popularity, notoriety, and like, you know, we're on a podcast talking about it, is, you know, there's so many conflicting opinions. And I think that people start to second guess like their gut, and they think they have to do affiliate and they have to do referral programs and they have to do all these different things. And it's like, no, you don't. Like maybe like if that works for your business and if that makes sense for your customers and your program and what you want to build as a brand. But I think that by doing less, it actually like can work better. But I wouldn't say it's easy. And Last Crumb, looking back, it's so easy to say, wow, like this has been kind of this amazing like rocket ship and it's grown so much. But every week is really hard. And you know, our first week to our second week, we grew like a little bit, but we didn't see like some crazy, you know, oh, this was the thing, this was the silver bullet. And I think I always joke with the team, and I think I tell this to any other entrepreneur I talk to, and I try to remind myself, is there's no silver bullet to like building a good business. Like there's not going to be this one thing you just do and all of a sudden like you are successful. And I kind of view it as we're, on a sailboat going through a storm. And my job in the early days of Last Crumb, and even still today, is keeping everyone from jumping off the boat or trying to like turn us in a different direction while we're going through this like storm, because, everyone has an idea and an opinion, but we don't get to see how these other companies are doing. So like, we don't know if affiliate really works for them. We just know they're doing it. And it could be a huge waste of time and like resources. And so I think it's like really understanding like what matters, what's success, and what are the things that can help you do that. And then continuing to like not double down, but continuing to invest in those and build out those channels before layering on like new channels.
Yep. So I want to hear your thoughts around email, because this is something that I've been personally debating of like, are emails really important anymore with, the privacy updates and like how people can just have, not fake emails, but they can generate tons of emails to be able to like subscribe to different lists. And it just seems like it's getting to a place where I'm like, is this the future? Like, do we actually want to own someone's email address and be able to like connect with them that way? Like, what are your thoughts when choosing two very specific channels? Like Instagram makes sense, of course, like, but emails is one where I'm just like, is that the future? But what are your thoughts?
We think about this a lot. I mean, our whole business is email. Mm-hmm. So we've never done any paid ever in the history of Last Crumb.
Oh, wow. No paid ever. That's probably a first on this show, or no paid. It's amazing.
That's awesome. And that's been like a constraint that like we've grown our email and our social and everything with no paid. Mm-hmm. Email is our entire business because we send and release our drops via email exclusively. We dabble in some SMS that we're like playing with, which I'm kind of really excited about. I think SMS is like really interesting. But I don't know. I think that email is here, and it's a lot easier to communicate with people. It's also easy to be clear. And for us, I think that because we have such a short window that people can buy our product, there isn't really a better option aside from like maybe SMS or like doing a couple other like things on social to drive people like we do with email to the site. I also think that it gives us like such an opportunity to like create like multifaceted experiences, like based on purchase history, recurring customers, that allows us to like go deeper and like actually have more fun and like delight customers that are like coming back or maybe haven't purchased in a while or haven't ever purchased. That is just a lot harder to do with other channels.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. So good enough for now then. And then if something new pops up in the future, can be examined, I guess.
Yeah, I would say though, the most exciting thing that I think we're thinking about right now is SMS.
Yeah, why are you so excited about SMS? Tell me, what are the secrets there you're seeing or that are making you excited?
Well, the thing that's interesting about SMS, I think, is that the immediacy. Mm-hmm. It's like, I don't check my personal email all day, every day. Like I check my work email, and I don't sign up for newsletters on my work email or, products on my work. And so with us, we sell products at a set time. So like, if you're kind of like, if you miss it, like you could just miss it because you were doing something else. Yeah. With text, I think it's really fascinating because like we can do so much stuff immediately, like in the moment. We can, and we've been testing it a lot and it's had really great results for us. But, we can do we've done a secret SMS drop and like sold out in like seconds, and it's a whole different ball game because you're driving immediacy. I think the thing that I think about with text that we haven't really cracked, and I think I haven't really seen anyone really nail it perfect, is that because so many people use text as spam, it can still like come across like you're the X like random person in X political party trying to raise $5 and like click this link and like donate to the like fun, whatever it is. So I think that's like a fun, but at the same time, I think there's like some fun to be had there. But yeah, I mean, with what we've done at Last Crumb, there is a very clear and simple D2C playbook. Nothing that we are doing is a secret, and nothing that we do as a company is rocket science. We just like actually, I think, put a lot of intention and thought into like the few things that we do to try to like make them really, really good. And I think we're seeing outsized results from that intention. Yep.
Okay, so I want to hear about the organic growth piece because I'm sure everyone listening is like, of course, I want to grow like that. I don't want to, have to spend on ads. I want to hear, I mean, how did you guys actually go about, I mean, I'm just thinking about new products. You don't have a customer list. How do you find your first customers? Like, how did you get in front of people? And then how did you grow organically?
So like for us, I mean, we had we had 100 emails when we launched our first drop or something like that, maybe 200. And we had a super small like Instagram following. It was like maybe 1,000 or 1,100 at the time. And we'd been kind of like trying to grow that with pictures and like getting people to like tag friends and things like that for the 2 months from like basically March when I joined through late April when we launched our first. And for us, we kind of created this like really organic flywheel around like the experience of Last Crumb. And our theory was if we could create some really interesting ways where people wanted to talk about the product and share it, that would have a like really amazing like organic spread that like could grow us like nothing else. And it worked. I mean, we created this like crazy flywheel and it's something that I saw early on when I was actually thinking about joining Last Crumb. Is they sent me a box of cookies and the box wasn't in the packaging that we use now. It was like a shoe box filled with like frizzy stuff, and the cookies were great. The packaging was horrible. And I had a few people over because I was kind of explaining, hey, I'm thinking about joining this company. Would be curious to hear what you think. And it was super fascinating for me to watch everyone interact with our product. And it was like, I think a really key thing that led to like some of the decisions that we made early on. And the founders had the same experience with their friends, which was the cookies are big and people immediately start cutting them up and then they start sharing them and then they start talking about them and comparing them. And then weirdly, they started taking pictures of them like, oh my God, this is so cool. And so a lot of what we did was like built around the experience of like eating Last Crumb because most people don't do it by themselves. And so how do we empower them with like language, imagery, a cool, amazing box that's like visually like something they want to share, so that they start communicating that through like social channels organically. And what we found is that and then we also we did a very small, I think there's a misconception that we did a huge, massive like influencer, like celebrity push. We did a very small, like very steady influencer push of like sending it to a couple people every week, and
like big influencers or like medium, like what kind of people are you targeting?
Like all kinds of different people. I think like,
okay.
I'm not sold on like big influencers.
Yeah.
Another hot take.
I've heard that actually from a couple people. Yeah. That
you'd
rather get from the micro ones. Yeah.
Yeah. Like micro influencers, like were great. And then what we found is as we were shipping more boxes and selling more boxes, the best people were the people that were just like people like me or you buying a box and then like doing it and the engagement from all their friends. Like, what is that? And then I think this is where kind of that like aspirational luxury, like scarce product comes into play, is that people love to flex on their friends and say like, I got them, you're on the wait list, haha. Like, and that became like kind of a fun thing. And then, we started to see people posting pictures of like us being sold out and like, oh my God, I tried again, like, and I didn't get them. And we would repost them. And a lot of what we did was like consistency in brand. So we basically just kept doing the things that were like the values and the things that we wanted people to be talking about so that more people would understand how we communicate the brand. And like, they would also do them in a very similar way, which created a lot of consistency on social media. And then it's just kind of like grown from there. We haven't abandoned that strategy. We just keep finding better and smarter ways to like do it. And then we've had some like amazing like celebrity hits because we created this like crazy product that everyone eats cookies. Like yesterday we had a video that was on TikTok, totally unprompted. No idea how she got this box of cookies, but recording artist Doja Cat. I don't know if you've heard of her.
Oh yeah.
She did a 10-minute unboxing video and flavor taste test of the flavors for 10 minutes on TikTok Live.
Oh my gosh.
And like just like
that's
kept
the best
talking.
Piece of marketing you've ever had.
I don't know. We'll see maybe.
Yeah, we'll find out.
But either way, it's cool. And like that kind of people are just excited because it's interesting and cool and like it actually tastes good. And I kind of always say when I talk to people like, I can't wait for you to get the box. It's literally going to be the best thing you've ever received. And I know deep down that there's nothing I can do to overhype it because it's that good. The packaging is that good. The shipping box is that good. The unboxing is that good. You know, we have a 40-page magazine that comes with every box that like goes into detail about all of the flavors. It's that cool. And then you taste them and you're like, oh my God, this is the best cookie I've ever had. And maybe there's some flavors that aren't your favorite thing because you don't like chocolate or lemon or something else, but there's going to be a couple flavors that are literally going to take you back and say, this is amazing. And I think that excitement is really cool. And then beyond that, you can't buy another box because you have to kind of start that whole like process again to like get a new box. And I think that like is really fun. And so I don't know, that's the way we've thought about organic when we were first launching, is like, how do we build some, like, I kind of say, this is going to sound really horrible, but I've always like, and I've said this, so I guess I'm saying it to myself past Matt, which is like, we've created like an amazing unboxing experience. And it's like, no, you haven't. Because if people aren't like posting about your product organically, talking about it, literally, like if people like Doja Cat aren't posting your box and talking about your box, it's not the best unboxing experience. Like, and you should go back to the drawing board. And I think that I see the power in, and I go back to the kind of theory that like, it's a very simple playbook. We just actually are like really going deep intentionally into all the pieces that everyone talks about. And by actually paying them off in a really unique and on-brand way, it actually creates those viral loops and that like organic excitement that everyone actually wants.
That's awesome. I mean, that's basically why you're here, because we were talking to Hello Bello team, and it was 2 women that we were talking to.
Yes.
And they were talking about this for like 5 minutes, where I was like, oh my gosh, like I need to figure out what this is about, because you all literally just told me about this now for 5 minutes, about the boxes, the cookies, what was in it, the order process, like how long you have to wait on a wait list or whatever. And that's like why you're even here. Cause I was like, this is interesting. I want to hear about these concepts. So I know that you mentioned that the concepts of drops is like, you know, we just did that because that's what works for our business, and it works for operations and production, and, you know, all of that just works for us. However, I do think that's like a big piece of a lot of the conversations around getting on the wait list and having to wait. And like, I mean, would you guys shift away from that if you got to a place where you're like, we can constantly be delivering cookies all day, every day. People can just go on, order whenever they want. Or is the beauty of this built up around the exclusivity of it? And, you know, it's a luxury thing and you have to wait. And like, how are you thinking about that over the long term?
I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think there's always, I can say with 100% certainty that there's always going to be an exclusive, like drop, interesting secret menu, you know, thing for Last Crumb. That is 100% part of our brand. Like that scarcity, that like hard to find, and that that journey to like even get it, I think makes it even better and worth the wait. You know, for Valentine's Day, we tried something different and we left the site open for like, you know, a week, and we kind of took pre-orders for Valentine's Day, and it was like a really successful test for us, which is something we hadn't done in the past. And just because Valentine's Day is different, like people are buying for a specific date, you know, doing it on a drop adds like kind of a new layer of complexity. I wouldn't say that it's something that we don't have plans to do again in the near term, but it was like a really fun way to try something different. I think that the way I would approach it is that like Last Crumb doesn't want to, you know, we don't want to build a brand that's like only does everything one way. We want to be able to have like the flexibility to continue to like iterate and like try different weird things, and, you know, see how they perform and like integrate them into like what we're doing. For us, you know, we are making cookies like basically like all day, every day, you know, during like most of the days during the week, and when we're not prepping. So like we can only make so many, which I think is like kind of like an interesting part of the process. I mean, we do everything in-house too. So we don't work with like, we do all of our own production. We do all of our own fulfillment, basically from ingredients arriving in our bakery to them leaving on a FedEx or UPS truck. We are the only people who touch what we do entirely. And that's also very unique in the direct to consumer space, which,
Yep.
when most people work with like 3PLs or like co-mans or factories overseas, which is, there's nothing wrong with that. But for us, like we control so much of the process that it kind of it created some constraints around supply that, doing drops, like I said, made a lot of sense for, because we can only just make so many. Like, humans make our cookies and they make them by hand, which is why one of the reasons that they're so good. And it's a multi-day process. And so, there aren't any big machines that we're just pouring all of our ingredients into, and like a cookie pops out at the end in a bag. Some days I wish that was the case, but that isn't. And so, we have a huge team of people who hand make every single cookie, which is awesome and really, really special.
Have you ever shown that, like the behind the scenes look of what it looks like to be making these cookies? Like that could be some good content.
It's interesting you say that. Actually, that was kind of like a zig to a zag. I would say that's like kind of what every like bakery company does, and it's content that works really well and it's really engaging. We kind of view our factory a little bit more like, where they make Hermes handbags, and they don't generally show that. And I think that like, it's not sad. It's funny because we have a beautiful, bakery, and everyone's wearing like what I would describe as like if Kanye West designed like the Last Crumb uniform, and like it's sick. Everyone's like in all black with like Last Crumb down their sleeves, and like I feel like I want to wear this like out, and we only give like that to like employees who like work for us, and so it's like it feels very cool. There's a vibe. But I think for us, the importance isn't, we're not a making of company. We want to showcase like the product and the end result that like all the time went into. So we don't currently do a lot of stuff like that. Occasionally we'll like tease a little bit on like TikTok or like an Instagram reel, but no, I think that's kind of what differentiates us from a lot of the other brands out there that make baked goods. And I think that content is great. It's just, how do we differentiate a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, that's really interesting like taking a step back and looking at what do other people do, and maybe we shouldn't be doing that. And I think that's like a beautiful approach, especially for a brand like yours that's positioning itself as a luxury brand. Like, okay, we don't want to do what all the other companies are doing, even if it is good content, even if it works. And that's cool, thinking about like, how do you keep like kind of some secrets behind what's going on there, even if it is amazing, like focus on the end product. It's a good way of thinking about it.
Totally. Like I look at like Truff, like the hot sauce.
They were on the show too.
Nick and Nick are they're beauties. They're just like total legends. They actually, full disclosure, invested in Last Crumb. But like, cool. I think that they do such a great job of like showing like the product, showing the end result, getting people excited about it. And I think we took a lot of cues from them early on, even before having met them. And I think that's a different approach too. So I think that's where we look, is like, what are we don't look a lot at our, I guess competition would be the right word, but like, we're not really looking at what the other companies do that make baked goods. We're looking at like companies like Truff, or we're looking at like luxury, handbag companies, or like other weird people where we can gather like inspiration from, I should say. And that's been like really helpful in like having us like really think outside the box and think differently and speak to customers in a way that has been really authentic to Last Crumb, but different than what they're normally like seeing.
I mean, it's interesting you say that, because we've heard that actually from so many executives on one of our other podcasts, where they say, when I'm trying to get inspiration, I like look outside of our industry, and I look at, how people are solving customer service issues in the airline industry, even if I'm in, automotive or hotel or whatever, and like trying to see what others are doing, but not looking at your exact competitors. Like, don't worry about them. Look at where you aspire to be, or the customer service process that you want and aspire to be at that maybe has nothing to do with your industry.
100%. Like when we just hired an amazing woman to lead customer experience for us. And she was formerly at Away Luggage and Tiffany's. And to me, it's like, oh, wow. Like amazing, a D2C brand that obviously has gone through some interesting things, but like also like has grew so much, over the last like 5 or 6 years, however long they've been around. And then Tiffany's, like you're talking about like a heritage, like luxury, like jewelry company that has like very customers with like super discerning tastes, but also sells mass, which is like fascinating through like certain lines of their product. And so, that's where we're thinking of like, how do we get people that are like doing really interesting things, or like even internally as like employees, that can provide like strategic value and insights that like have nothing to do with like baked goods.
Yep. Okay, so I want to hear a bit about your thoughts around like the e-commerce industry in general. I want to hear either maybe earlier you mentioned you had, a hot take around influencers. Like what are some maybe ideas you have that not everyone would agree with you on when it comes to the future of e-commerce? Or like what do you see, coming into the future in the next like 1 to 2 years?
I mean, I think that like this whole ad issue that's like happening, obviously like this is me from like my ivory tower of like not, we don't do ads. So like, I don't know, but like from my peers and people that I talk to, it just seems like there's going to be kind of like a come to Jesus moment, I guess, in terms of like all these brands that like have been built off of like, customer acquisition. And that is getting more difficult and harder. And I think that it kind of goes back to my thought of like, there are a lot of products that like probably shouldn't exist. Or I should re-say this. There's a lot of products that are just like commoditized products that everyone's trying to like portray as like this brand and build this like community around them. And some are great and some work, but a lot of them don't. And I think we're going to start to see a lot of like attrition in terms of brands closing or changing or selling at a significant loss to like bigger companies, or rolling up and becoming like Amazon brands, or, something that's sold in retail, which is totally fine because there's a lot of really great products that I, use and love. But it's like, I don't care about your community. Like you're my body wash.
Toothbrush. Yeah.
And so I think that's going to be like really interesting. And I think that there's like a lot of opportunity in that as well, because it like, I think sets the stage for like, I guess in some ways like brands like Last Crumb to come in and say like, oh, well, if you can find a way to create organic community and grow rapidly, and like, you're going to be one, I think if we did ads, we'd be highly effective just based on like the organic growth that we've already had. But I think that we like it forces people to build differently. And I think actually build like stronger, because you actually have to do the harder part first, which is how do we build a brand? How do we build community? How do we build a good product? And then you layer in the things that are the fire on the the fuel on the fire. So like, as opposed to we're going to like fuel the fire and then hopefully we're going to end up with a brand at the end of it, because we came up with like an algorithm that allowed us to like find like a niche in the market that like didn't exist anymore. And that's not to say that that model still won't work, but I think it's going to get harder. And I think that by having fewer people do it, it will probably work better for the few. But I think there's just a lot of noise right now.
Yeah. It's an interesting thought process thinking about how brands will start to be built in the coming years if all those changes happen and go through. And I mean, it's doing what you guys are doing now, but I don't see many people, like I said, doing that. So you'll be well positioned.
I think now people are realizing that they can build a little bit differently. And I think that I was talking to someone earlier today about, I think that we've come full circle, and I feel very fortunate in that I was like one of the, last like kids who got to learn about like brand marketing before like customer acquisition was like a thing in terms of like direct paid spend. And I think we're coming back to like that brand marketing where it's like, what is a brand? Like, how do you build something like people are excited about? And like, how do you build that interest? And then customer acquisition becomes the fuel that like can help that grow, or whatever these like channels are. And I think that that's interesting, because I think there's one of the problems that exists, and I see this when I talk to like mainly marketers, is that a lot of people don't know marketing. They just know how to do like paid. And paid isn't marketing. Paid is just a tactic that can fuel marketing. So I think that there's this like really interesting kind of like full circle on that, that I think is going to be, I think, really fun. And I think going to build a lot of like much more interesting and like gauging brands that all don't look the same, that all don't follow the same playbook, that is going to make, I don't know, that is going to make better products, better companies.
Yeah. Are there any books or resources that you rely on to maybe stay up to date with what's happening? Or when you say, okay, a lot of these brands like don't really even understand marketing, like getting back to the basics, is there something where you're like, you would recommend a certain book to be read to be able to get back to the basics, or that maybe people have recommended to you that have been super helpful?
I mean, I think the best book that I've read in the last like few years that was recommended to me was actually a book that had nothing to do with anything related to like marketing. It was a book by Danny Meyer, the restaurateur, called Setting the Table. And it's all about like hospitality and just like how he approached building his restaurant group. That I think was like, I wasn't even, that book was like a really interesting way to like think about people and like, how do you like delight them, that I think is really relevant to like building a company. I mean, like in terms of like newsletters, like I follow like a bunch of newsletters. I think like the two probably biggest ones that I follow are like the Lean Lux newsletter, which is like super D2C focused. Paul's like done an amazing job of curating that over the years. And then 2 p.m. by like Webb Smith, which is like also just fantastic and like super insightful and engaging. I would say those are like the two that I would probably like say that I like really go deep on. Otherwise, I mean, for me, it's just talking to more people. I think like meeting with founders, being involved in like Slack communities, like trying to like engage and like learn and like just understand what's going on and like just kind of like watch. Because I think that there's a lot of like really interesting stuff going on. And so I don't know, that's kind of like how I like look at like a brand like Olipop.
Oh yeah.
Just
they
like
came on the show too. They're awesome.
crushes it. I mean, like, but like from like they nail it. Like their boxes are good. Their customer service is good. Their social is good. Their branding is good. It's everything. Like they kind of nail all the touch points and they don't like stray away from what they do well. You know, same with like Truff. Great product, super tight. And like, they know exactly who they are and they're not trying to be everything for everyone, but like everyone likes it because it is what it is. And I think that that's how I think about Last Crumb, is that like we took a huge chance on building a brand that sold really the most expensive cookie box that's ever existed with like really like in a really interesting way that no one had tried in like cookies. And we did it in like with branding and like a style that like no one had ever really seen. And like it could have not worked. And I think that's the exciting thing, is that like that's the risk that I think is going to make a lot of like new companies really successful, is like actually having a position and not trying to be these bland like product hero image reviews. Here are the like validators from like press. Here's like some like identifiable reasons that our product's better than like everyone else. And then like, oh, you should buy and like mainly subscribe. It's like, that's the playbook for like 90% of the companies that exist in like D2C today. And that was the playbook that I kind of had followed like previously to Last Crumb, because that's what you're supposed to do kind of. And I think what we're seeing is like really, really, really interesting, engaging stuff. And that's like really taking off because people are like really looking for like stuff that's different of all ages too. This isn't like a Gen Z thing or a millennial thing. You know, we have customers of all age groups. People just want cool stuff.
Yep, I agree. That's a great way to end the interview. People just want cool stuff. Matthew, thank you so much for hopping on here today. It was really enjoyable hearing about what you all are up to at Last Crumb. Where can people find out more about you and Last Crumb?
I mean, they can find us online. It's just www.lastcrumb.com. And me, I don't know. I mean, I guess LinkedIn or something.
LinkedIn it is.
I try to keep a low profile. But yeah, thank you. This is awesome. It was really fun chatting with you.
If you're looking for the #1 platform for all things commerce, there's no better choice. So definitely go check it out at salesforce.com/commerce.